Checking the mic. Hey, it works. That's so cool. Don't we love it when technology just works? Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming on a Friday afternoon. My name's Kathy Astromoff. I'm the head of developer success at Twitch. The talk was originally billed as 8 ways to succeed with broadcasters. Sorry to report that the 8th way got on a plane to go home last night, so we're going to have to deal with 7. Couple of assumptions here. I was going to ask you all to raise hands, but I can't see, so it's okay. Assumptions is that, oh, thank you. Raise your hands if you are a game developer. Sweet. Raise your hands if you have used a streaming service as a consumer. Excellent. Raise your hands if you have actually broadcasted your own self. Thank you. Raise your hands if you bought a game on Steam. Just checking. Raise your hands if you suspect streaming can help you succeed and you're not quite sure how or why. Awesome. Great. Yeah, so this is the show me the data talk, right? Like we all have this suspicion, I hope by now, that there's a lot of people watching people play games on Twitch and participating in those chats. What can I do about that as a developer? So this is the why should I care talk. A couple things. Despite the purple slides, this is not a sponsored session. This is my disclaimer to keep good with the GDC people. All of these approaches you should be able to experiment with on any streaming platform without paying the platform holder, without paying me, without paying, frankly, anybody. We do have one example of a developer paying a broadcaster for an outcome, but I think you'll find the story there is really interesting, so I chose to include it. A note on methodology for our data wonks. We got our data from 3 sources. One source was the developers themselves. We also got the narrative from the developers on what they did in and around broadcasting. We used our own internal data, and we also used Steam data from their public API. Our universe for the cases where we combined Twitch viewers with Steam, where we compared Twitch behavior with Steam behavior, is essentially Twitch viewers with connected Steam accounts. The sample size for that is 1/188 of all Twitch views, so it's a pretty large sample in Twitch land. We made an assumption for simplicity that Steam-connected Twitch views are equally likely to lead to a sale as all other Twitch views. We actually, Danny, our data scientist, and I just had a big discussion about this. There's some baked-in things into that assumption, so definitely come talk to us about that if you have questions. We also attribute where we see a Twitch view and a Steam sale within a 24-hour proximity by a single person. We call that causative, right? And the attribution there is any touch point within a 24-hour window split the sale. If you don't understand at all what I'm talking about, you should come talk to us afterwards. If you understand and have questions about it, you should also talk to us afterwards. Finally, a view is greater than a minute watched. Danny set that point at a minute because greater than that didn't seem to have any meaningful impact on the outcome. Finally, the period is the past 5 months of sales. So that sort of limited the universe of games that we chose to talk about. So, backing way up from methodology, how do developers succeed? Well, you have to create a fun game that stands out. Used to be in the old days, you could create a fun game and that was sufficient. That is no longer sufficient. You want to be able to present it to people who might like it. Discovery of content in the internet era is like the problem of our time as content creators. It's still a problem. You need to be able to convert those folks to players, either for free or for money. You need to be able to engage your current players, keep them from running away, and you need to be able to re-engage your lapsed players and invite them to come back if they once enjoyed your game. So, against that framework, what are some ways to succeed with broadcasting? Well, I'm cheating a little, I think, by saying way 1 is actually to create a fun game. I'm going to sit on that topic for a second. It's really important. In the world of broadcasting and internet influencing, you can no longer buy your way in. For those of us who are indies who could never buy our way in, whatever. However, gone are the days where you could ship something awful and have a $10 million marketing budget to put it on the shelf. As Danny, my colleague, said when we were preparing this, when Twitch can, if you don't make a fun game, Twitch can't help you. And I would add to that in saying, if you didn't make a fun game, Twitch actually hurts you. It torches you instantly. So I'm going to sit on that as a necessity. One of the things we've been talking about at GDC and we've been hearing about is this concept of creating for your community, right? There's many people who sit there and think, I'm going to make the game that I want to make, and then I'm going to decide how to take it to market. And there are mythical people out there who are going to enjoy it, and once I ship it, I'll figure that out. We've been encouraging folks to think about their community from the point of design, right? Off-World Industries is a great example of doing this. They've been creating shooter mods for 10 years. They're completely in the hardcore shooter community. The hardcore shooter community actually self-organized into a competitive league called Squad GG. And so when Off-World decided they wanted to make a game, they said, maybe we'll make a game for the community that we know, which is hardcore shooters. And that's how they came up with the concept of Squad. So from the beginning of Squad's development, Off-World, engaged the community mightily. Luckily, they'd already had relationships with broadcasters by virtue of their involvement in the community. So every time a broadcaster streamed the game, a developer would sit and chat. They'd take notes. They'd watch how the broadcaster played. And when we looked at the result of all this on Twitch and associated that with Steam behavior, we saw basically, plus or minus 5%, but give or take 13% of sales resulted from that activity on Twitch specifically. So lots of other ways for them to influence their community. Twitch had a great component in that as well. Engaging with broadcasters was a key component of that success, right? So another aspect of engaging your community pre-release, you guys probably all saw, I'm hoping, Twitch Plays Punch Club. So TinyBuild and Lazy Bear did a super job of not just developing a game with the community in mind, but engaging the community pre-release. For those of you who don't know the story, what ended up happening was they set a release date on Steam, and then they challenged the Twitch community, hey everybody, via Twitch Plays mechanism, beat the game, and the sooner you beat it, the sooner we'll release the game. Like if you beat our release day, we'll release it on that day. I think they were estimating about a week it would take for the Twitch community to beat it. Turns out they beat it in something like 2 days, 3 days. As a result of that effort, 1.2 million viewers on Twitch saw Punch Club. So that was a phenomenal reach that they achieved. In addition, we saw, again, from our Twitch data plus Steam data, that Punch Club viewers were 4.6x as likely to go on to buy Punch Club as other Steam-connected viewers. So against the base sample, folks who saw Punch Club went on to buy it. And finally, we estimate that Twitch drove 25% plus or minus 10%. I know that's a wide statistical swing of overall Punch Club sales. The wide swing essentially comes from some things that we still have to drill down to in attribution. I think those of you who are familiar with attribution know that attribution on the internet is really kind of difficult. And there's arguments about like last point of touch and do you give all the credit there and blah, blah, blah. Again, if we want to talk about methodology, Danny and I are going to be available afterwards. Another finding that was hugely surprising really to folks inside of Twitch is the value of mid-tier broadcasters to developers. My friend Terry at Wicked Fun made a game called Force of Elements. She was convinced from the get-go that broadcasters were going to help drive her game. And she did two big things. The first thing is she devoted her entire user acquisition budget to essentially paying broadcasters to promote the game. And she also created custom characters and engaged mid-tier broadcasters in doing voiceovers and really engaged them in the development process, like brought them into the game. So here's some results from that. We partnered with, and I was working with her on this, we partnered with a very large broadcaster, name brand broadcaster, to try and drive some traffic. And then in addition to our efforts to, with mid-tier broadcasters, to work with them on a more collaborative basis. Well, yeah, the large name brand broadcaster drove a ton of traffic. He drove a ton of views. The views converted okay. The folks who installed the game as a result of that broadcaster's efforts lapsed really quickly. Like they didn't even make it to day 3 or day 7. Whereas the folks in the mid-tier who came out of those mid-tier broadcasters' efforts, it's not shown on this chart, but like not only did they, not only did they convert, and not only did they stay on day 1 or day 3, the majority of their day 30 retention was driven through these mid-tier broadcasters. So when I saw this, I was like, and then I, did this before I came to Twitch, and then when I came to Twitch, I thought, is this true across Twitch? So looking across the entire sample of Twitch-connected, Twitch viewers connected with Steam accounts, what we're seeing is, it's a bit of a dense slide, the broadcasters with roughly 300 to 3,000 concurrents are the sweet spot for game developers in terms of delivering value. And here's what I mean. We always think of the name brand broadcasters as driving tons of views, and we kind of automatically assume that that's going to give us the result. The reality is that name brand broadcasters are really great at literally widespread impressions, not as effective in conversion. So if you look at the data, the total number of units driven by that mid-tier broadcaster segment and the total number of units sold driven by the name brand broadcasters is roughly similar across the entire population. So just, across Twitch, from our pan Twitch data, reinforcing the point that for developer partnerships, mid-tier broadcasters are totally the way to go. Now, something to think about here is special bonus, they actually return your calls. Special bonus, you don't have to pay them wads of money. And extra special bonus, they just love it when you use your developer mojo for them, right? So you can do the special skin, you can do the voiceover, you can do the cross promotion of channels, and they love that stuff. They're dying to do it. So again, shifting focus for us all onto mid-tier. So having just talked a lot about mid-tier, I'm going to tell you about Lyric. As I mentioned before, folks tend to think with the brand name broadcasters like, well, if I could just get Lyric's attention, I'll sell a lot of units. Well, there's a really good reason to get Lyric's attention. It's not necessarily to sell a lot of units. It's actually to get the words, the network effect going among the broadcaster community. So Hurt World is the game. Bankroll Studios did a great thing. They were able to get Lyric to play Hurt World on Sub Sunday. So this is the thing Lyric does where he asks his subscribers to vote him a game to play on Sunday, and they voted up Hurt World. So yeah, sure, he and other larger broadcasters drove about 14% of sales for that game. 50% of the sales were from the broadcasters who caught on to Lyric thereafter, right? So again, the value here is the mid-tier drives the value. The trick is getting the mid-tier's attention. Partnering with a large-scale broadcaster is a way to get the mid-tier's attention. Another thing to think about with broadcasters is you kind of want to be broadcasting when they're ready to buy. So this is a really interesting, kind of an odd thing that showed up on our Xbox One streaming app. The data scientists who work on that app were beginning to see a strange, spiky pattern that happened very regularly. So they sort of dug into it, and here's what they found. The way this happens is these particular users open the Twitch app on Xbox One from a deep link. The majority of deep links come from the App Store. So these are people who were referred from the App Store and traveled over to their Twitch app to go look at something. What we saw was, the first thing is deep link initiated viewing sessions peak on days when Xbox Gold game list updates, right? So people were driven to Xbox Gold to see what new games were out there. And from there, they were traveling to Twitch. Well, what did they do when they landed on Twitch? The first thing they did was the largest proportion of sessions were on new games on the Xbox Gold list. So they were going to check out on Twitch the Xbox Gold list new games. And then, what did they do? Well, the weird thing is they viewed for a much shorter time than average. They viewed for 7 to 8 minutes as opposed to the average on that app of 42 minutes a game. It's kind of an amazing long average, right? Like, think about that, 42 minutes. So long story short, this tells us our theory about this, and we still have yet to confirm, but our theory about this is shopping behavior, right? People go to Xbox Gold, they see a new game, they go, what is that? Where are they going to find the information about the game? Twitch. They're looking for Twitch broadcasts and Twitch VODs. So again, this effect might also be the case for Twitch competitors, in which case you should definitely look into it. The takeaway here is not like, oh, promote your shit on Twitch. The takeaway here is promote your stuff in the place where you think your community is actually buying, and promote it when you think they have their wallet out. Try and figure out what those behaviors are. So coming from there, now you have all the players, right? Give me all the players. Now you have all the players. And you want to keep them from going away. And how do you do that? So we dug into this question and found we've always asked ourselves the question, it was how does watching gameplay affect player churn? Does it actually encourage people to stick around? The trick in untangling this question has always been, more engaged players play more, meaning people who watch more play more, people who play more watch more. Isn't that a chicken and the egg? And the answer is yes, but from a statistical perspective, you can address this problem by controlling for days played in the prior week, right? And that way you can measure churn as a relative percentage of what happened compared to the week before. So when Intrepid Danny did this, we saw some interesting things. Going back to if you don't make a good game, Twitch can't help you. The idea here is that engaged players get more engaged. And now what does that look like? So across the top 50 games across Twitch, the way to read this percentages is for 1,000 people who played in week 1, 87 of those people might have fallen off in week 2, except that they didn't because they watched a view on Twitch, right? That's how to read these numbers. So taking the same example for Team Fortress 2, of 1,000 people who played Team Fortress 2 in week 1, 324 of them would have disappeared in week 2, except that they watched a view. So a couple of assumptions around that. Again, this is a view with greater than 1 minute watch, same definition as before. The biggest effect here was players who in that week 1 had played from 3 to 6 days, right? And the idea here is if you play for 1 to 2 days, you're already out. Like your play is tapering off. You haven't caught them in the sweet spot. If you've played for 7 days, you love the game, and there's not much statistically significant thing Twitch can do to improve that. You're already in. So the biggest sweet spot there is between 3 to 6 days. That's the point at which when you see the taper, that's the sweet spot at which to try and re-engage via broadcasting viewing. So the takeaway here is really, for those of you who are working with cohorts and are watching your players in terms of cohorts, make sure to set up a cohort of players who have played within that 3 to 6 day window and have a rolling promotional schedule to engage that cohort within that window. For those of you who don't have cohorts, broadcast weekly or broadcast every 3 days, depending on where you think your sweet spot here is. That will be the blanket effect, right, for covering these particular cohorts if you're not actually measuring them. So recapping a bit here, how you can succeed in broadcasters, creating a fun game that stands out. The way that it stands out is that you know your community and you're engaging them from the get-go. You can present, you can get your game discovered through mid-tier broadcasters who are part of your community and who have an affinity with the thing you're creating. Get the top ones if you can. It's useful but not necessary to work with top broadcasters. Finally, you can convert your viewers with broadcast time to purchasing windows. Try and get a sense of when your viewers have their wallets out or when they're considering new games to buy, and time your activity around that. And finally, the idea is to engage and re-engage with consistent broadcasting. Weekly, if you don't know how to measure your cohort, and within that magic 3 to 6 day window if you do. So I have some special thanks to Danny, Wenja, and Brooke, who completely, I should just say they did this talk because they contributed mightily to it. I want to thank the developers and folks who worked with us, Offworld, Tiny Build, Lazy Bear, Wicked Fun, and Bankroll Studios for permission to talk about their games. And now it's time for questions. Hi.
Hello. I work at Digital Extremes, and we do weekly broadcasts for Warframe. We do like a primetime thing at night and evening with our girls, and then we do developer live diaries essentially every other Friday.
Great.
Do you find there's a trade-off between showing off pure gameplay and then doing more of a Q&A type thing in terms of broadcast exposure or viewership numbers? Like our dev streams do like 12 or 13,000 concurrent, and then our prime times do about 6 or 7. We want to kind of elevate the prime times. Now the weird thing is the prime times are gameplay and the dev streams are Q&A. So it seems backwards to us in terms of what's more popular. Right.
So I have a question about that. Why do you ask?
Just want to get both as high as we can.
Okay, so you're not trying to choose between one or the other?
No, because they both serve different purposes. Yeah. But we're just trying to figure out why one does better than the other and how to make the other one kind of get to the same level as our higher performing.
I think the answer of why one does better than the other lies in the people who are watching, right? There are people out in the world who are interested in hearing you talk about your game, and there are other people in your community who are really only interested in seeing what you're actually doing with your game. I don't know that there's an answer to how do you get the one side higher without understanding what the addressable market is for that particular style of broadcast. I think diversity in broadcast strategy is a really good idea. There may be a third type of content creation you should be looking at or anticipating for another cohort of folks who are interested in not just developer Q&A and not just gameplay, but something else entirely. I would definitely encourage you for specifics, talk to Brooke right there. He's got his hand up. I'm sure he's got all kinds of ideas about that kind of thing.
I was curious if you've seen a significant difference between players that are engaging in like Twitch plays games like Choice Chamber or other games versus like kind of a standard viewing experience, or if it's kind of an evolving data set that you're kind of still learning from.
So from an engagement perspective, by definition, we're seeing a difference because the folks who are playing Stream First or Twitch Plays games are playing, right? And they have the opportunity to play, and they have the chance that they might get called on in various ways. So I think of it about as a lean forward, lean back sort of viewing experience. A Twitch Plays, that kind of thing is very much a lean forward, where you're anticipating something happening that might engage you. From a conversion perspective, we haven't on purpose looked at that yet in terms of the Steam sales. However, what we did notice is of all the games that we surfaced in our research, the ones that had the higher percentage of games attributable to Twitch were the Twitch Plays and Stream First games. Unsurprisingly, right? Like, this is not rocket scientist. Of course, it should be the case. So I think that's an area of further work, for sure.
I'm working on a game that's probably about a year off being finished, I'm my best guess. And I've had sort of some interest from some maybe mid or low level Twitch streamers. And I'm kind of torn as to whether to just kind of go whole hog on it and give it to anyone who wants it all the way through development, or whether it's better to wait and on the fear that them covering it early, they may not like it as much, it's not as good as it will be when it's done,
right.
Or they may get bored of it and not want to cover it when it's out. Is it better to kind of save it all up and promote it heavily when it comes out, or is it better just to slow burn and build and build?
Right. Well, let's consider the trade-offs. Let's say that you spend a lot of time making a wonderful, perfect game, and you put it out there and everybody hates it. And you get like, well, your mom bought it, right? Versus you put it out there now when you have a chance to change it, and 10 people hate it. So I think with that trade-off question, I'm suggesting that you lean towards the former, right? If you're making something that people hate, and obviously there's a polish issue, right? So the way this works inside of a community is if you've got fans right now who love what you're doing, I would encourage you to engage those folks in helping participate in the community on your behalf to help manage the community's expectation as to the level of doneness of what you're showing. So what happens there is, if you just ship something that's half done with no context for the folks who are paying attention, yeah, they're going to shit all over that. They're going to be like, this isn't working, blah. If you prepare the folks who are fans of your game and say, hey, I'm going to ship this, just so you all know, it's in this particular state for this particular reason. I'm educating you on why that is so that you can then go out and help me explain to the community what I'm looking for from them. Then, when your thing ships and somebody goes, it's not done, whatever, the members of your community will say, no, dude, don't harsh on him. It's that reason, the way because of that reason. Excuse me. It's that way because of this reason. Okay. So I'm violently on the side of show early, show often.
Great. Do you see any effect where, like, broadcasters, once they've covered a game, are less likely to cover it in future, or do they kind of latch on and then stick with it? I guess it varies from game to game.
I think yes, and I think the earlier you engage a particular broadcaster who might have a propensity for enjoying your game, the more of a lifelong, so to speak, relationship you would build with that broadcaster, right? Meaning they have a vested interest in your success, right? So at that point, they're going to broadcast as much as they can because their face is actually in the game, or because their voice is actually in the game, or just because they love you and they want to be influential within their own community, right?
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, my name is Ilya. I'm the head of community and esports at Amazon Game Studios. Thank you for the presentation. It was very informational.
Oh, I'm glad.
And the question I had is, do you guys at Twitch have a theory as to why the mid-range broadcasters are more successful at conversion than the top tier?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a theory. It emerged from this work, so we haven't yet pursued the actual data around the theory. The theory, there's a couple of theories, and it goes back to broadcaster motivation. One of broadcasters' big motivations is sort of being influential, right? Being seen as a mover and a shaker within the community. So finding new games that might catch on elsewhere in Twitch, therefore they can get a pat on the back from their buddies, is a big motivation. So they're a little bit hungrier perhaps than the name brand streamers on that.
So it's drive.
That's one. I mean, there are a few others, but I think the main one is, there's another big motivation, which is the folks who follow a mid-tier streamer are like real hardcore fans, right? They're not just sort of casually following, and they found a particular streamer that they love and they're subscribing to and they're giving money to and whatever. So that broadcaster doesn't want to let those people down. So the motivation to continue to keep those folks entertained and continue to feed them things that they might like is just huge. And so they're like turning themselves inside out for what is the next thing that I can do for my community. So that leads to like a demand function, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Jonathan. This question's kind of flying through my head right now, so I'm not, if I don't make sense.
Sorry, I broke your brain.
Yeah. So the examples that you've provided, like they're very much oriented towards like traditional like PC console games, but what about when it comes to the mobile market and you've got products that aren't normally designed to be able to play in long sessions? Like how have you seen streamers sort of effectively handle those sorts of products, or do you think that there's some inherent ability of those products just not being a good streamable game?
Right. I think that good point. So part of the reason we didn't cover, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg. Part of the reason we didn't cover mobile is that we don't have a ton of data on mobile, and we focused on Steam, which is not obviously how mobile folks transact. So, so for the purpose of this talk, not in the sample. In general with mobile, there are a couple of issues. It's difficult to stream a mobile game. You've got your screen here and your screen here. You're kind of going like this. You need special gear, blah, blah, blah. All of the things that to think about from a game design perspective definitely apply to mobile games. And all of the things that apply to engaging your community from up front definitely apply to mobile games. I think we're only just seeing, Brooke, what was? Clash Royale, yeah. So Clash Royale.
That was the one that was in my head that I was thinking.
Clash Royale is the one game that's like figured this out.
Yeah.
And we're not surprised to see that going like that, at least on Twitch. So the idea is, it's harder for mobile games designers, I think, to have a viewability or a legibility construct, because typically mobile is only like this, and yet it's still possible, as we've seen. So the key thing is, in your design, take those elements of designing for spectatability or legibility and designing for your community in mind first. Those all still apply.
Can I ask one follow-up question?
Yeah.
So what about then, say, if you're giving a streamer, say, in-game currency or premium currency, then at that point, has that shown to have a negative effect on some people who might be viewing it, who are given this sort of like asymmetrical position in how they will actually experience the game because they've got given this money which they otherwise have to pay for free, I guess?
Yeah, we don't have data on that question here. Your question reminds me of the intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation sort of challenge, which is if you haven't made something intrinsically motivating, your only resource is currency and paying people to do stuff, and that's extrinsic. So don't have any particular data, but happy to have the intrinsic versus extrinsic conversation with you later.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi there, Chris from Riot Games. I'm curious, we noticed that during the, when we were talking about churn, there was a pretty broad spread between, say, Dota 2 being at 9% impact and Team Fortress 2 being much higher. Do you have any theories as to why?
No theory yet. That is that was like the first, once we saw that, we're like, oh my God, why is the game that, Sorry, I don't mean no theory. The universe that we're looking at, given that it's Twitch universe, tilts towards competitive multiplayer. So the games that we saw this, the games that we looked at were competitive multiplayer games, and in some cases free-to-play games, and therefore were designed for churn, or designed to prevent churn. It's an interesting question whether all game designers, not all game designers design for churn, nor should all game designers necessarily care about churn, right? If you've got your $20 up front and you don't intend to monetize from that point on, none of that actually, that 3 to 6 day retention thing doesn't matter at all, right? So that's our literally as of this morning, we're like, maybe it's that, and it needs more work.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ken from Rainbow Studios. We're about to launch our Twitch stream, so apart from social media, like, are there any other areas where it's a good way to build viewers?
That's a good question. Where do you think the players of your game might be congregating right now?
Well, like, mainly social media, I guess. But.
Right, right. The reason I'm asking is going back to sort of this concept of building for your community. You probably have some sense of a prototype player in mind, or players who play this game might like my game. Go find where those people hang out. And then engage in them with them there and talk with them there. I mean, Reddit, I can throw up my hand and say Reddit. I can throw up my hand and say Twitter. It's not about the platform. It's about your community that you're targeting is already congregating somewhere. Figure out where that is and then engage with them there. Not in a, hey, everybody buy my game way, but in a, hey, I'm thinking of doing this thing. What do you guys like? What might you want? It's a give and take. It's not a broadcast marketing anymore.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Go ahead.
Hi. So my question is, maybe you may not have data on this. In that case, I would like this to be a future request.
Thank you.
For data.
Goody, more work.
So do you have any data on devs? Think of an indie game that's in the process of being developed. There's nothing yet, and some people do like dev blog, dev diary type of content. Do you have any data on how much of that, any correlation between that kind of activity and future success?
I think not here and not in this construct. However, there are tons of examples of developers who, dating back quite a while actually, of developers who have engaged their community in the get-go using the tools available. I'll bring out an example that shows how old I am. When BioWare was first beginning to get popular, I had a meeting with them where they brought to the table their statistics on participation in their gamer forums, that unusually at the time, they were running their own gamer forums. They didn't cede that responsibility to the publisher. And to the business meeting, they came in, Ray and Greg came in, and they said, look, we have 700,000 members of our forums. And by the way, we did a survey, and 85% of them said they would categorically, absolutely buy the next BioWare game. So I bring up that example just to show the power and the value of, there's a lot of examples of the most successful developers are already doing this and have started to do this and have been doing this for a long time. It's not in our data here. It's more about engaging with your community early on pays off because you have built in your community that you own and you control, and you have the ability to communicate directly with that player without the intermediation of a publisher. That is an asset that you bring to the table. Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Great. Lunchtime. Hey, don't forget, you're going to get an email on this session. Please fill it out with feedback on how we did today, and please be honest. Thank you.